Welcome to another episode of Badges and Banter. My name is Jeff Halstead, retired Chief of Police out of Fort Worth, Texas. And with me is my partner, Chief Ken Kemna. Ken, good morning.
Good morning, Chief. How you doing? Nice to see you again, as always.
Hey, it's good to see you. We're trying this virtually this time. So we have with us our guests and, all in different locations. He's in Michigan, Ken's in Oregon. I'm here in Las Vegas. But Gregg Bird is with us, and Gregg, career emergency manager. He also has started going into his own consulting business, Preparedness 360 Solutions. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the emergency management profession, how he got started. But really, I'd just like to welcome our guest, Gregg Bird. Welcome.
Thanks, Jeff and Ken. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So you're currently in Michigan now. Where was your career of 30 plus years in this profession? Where did you serve?
So I was born and raised and actually started my career in public service as a volunteer firefighter EMT in central Pennsylvania, a little town north of State College, Penn State University, go State. And spent most of it then, the next 21 years of my career on the Eastern Shore of Maryland before moving to Northern Michigan almost 13 years ago now.
So you started out as a volunteer firefighter, huh?
I was going to let you go into that, Ken, because I know you're going to have a lot to talk about this, so I'll let you have it.
Go by. Hey,
you got to have it.
I did. I spent. I'm still currently a non-active, but I'm a life member of the Galena Volunteer Fire Company on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, and ended up having pretty much held every elected line officer position within the department, and very proud of my career there. And as a full-time, I was a 911 dispatcher, both in the state of Delaware and in Maryland. And when I left there, I ended up running the 911 center operationally. I was the Emergency Operations Center operations chief, and also the manager and day-to-day operations director of our county career EMS, Advanced Life Support.
Well, you jumped into the deep end of the pool in a pretty meaningful way then if you took over communications center. Oh, and I think I just heard you say something about your EMS system as well. Those are weighty subjects and then some. Running a comm center is, well, working in a comm center is no joke. Running a comm center is legitimately no joke.
Yeah, and going out from working in a comm center for so long and being an employee and going up to having seniority and then going up to a supervisor, then getting put in the position of being the deputy director of emergency services and running one, it's kind of something I took for granted at the time. But I remembered all the lessons, good and bad, that mentors, good and bad, had taught me over the previous years. And we ended up with such an amazing team in that comm center. And like most comm center, there's intrinsic issues and personality conflicts and issues, but trying to change the culture of that center and instill in employees, whether already there or new employees, the culture of caring about each other. And we're 911 dispatchers, firefighters, law enforcement, EMS folks, we're family. It's not just about the job. We're family. We spend more time either at the fire station or in the 911 center with them. And so in trying to instill that culture, and it took quite a bit of time, but when I left there, I think the biggest compliments that can be paid to me as a trainer and an instructor and is seeing folks that you hired or had a role in hiring them, and some of which more on heart and attitude than skill and ability, that now have either equaled or surpassed you. And I think that's the greatest compliment as a manager, as a leader, whoever we are. It's not about what we accomplish. It's about the folks that entrust learning from us. And so I'm very happy that most of those folks that I came up with and that ended up being their boss, most of them are either still in the business, have been promoted, and two of them actually are doing the job the jobs that I did before I left there. And I just think that's how I've kind of spent time learning and being a student of organizational leadership. And I think above and beyond any fancy budgetary things we can do, it's treating people how we want to be treated, treat them with respect, and training them to exceed your ability and where you are. So
that is fantastic, and I would be remiss if I didn't at least acknowledge that as a lifelong first responder, having worked with our dispatch community, running a communication center at one point in my career, I have so much respect for our communication center folks. The job that they do, that as I said, as a volunteer firefighter, sort of growing up in the industry, you work with the comms. You don't really understand what the comm center does, and then you go, and then you see it, and you sit there, and you're like, there's no way I multitask like this. It is absolute insanity what they are capable of doing. So just shout out of respect to the entire community and the folks that do that job. That is hard work. That is legitimately hard work.
Yeah, I remember when we were, I was going to just say when we were, when I was in Phoenix PD, we had this kind of a distinctive separation between like the patrol operations, patrol mission, and then the communications bureau. So our chief then at the time had this idea that anytime someone has an industrial injury, you got hurt on duty, you're going down to communications bureau so you can see exactly how hard and how difficult we make their jobs at times, because our attitudes in patrol were sometimes not the most beneficial to a harmonious relationship. So two things happened. A great deal of respect came to communications, and people got healed really fast. So it was a win-win for us.
Yeah, that's a great. We did the same thing. We went from a culture of no one was allowed in to encouraging visitors and tours and ride-alongs in a dispatch chair if you want it, much the same as we do in other disciplines of public safety.
So, Greg, I want to ask you a question, then I'll give it to Ken for a minute. You talked about instituting change, significant change. What leadership skill was used the most to successfully drive change from your position?
There was some intrinsic knowledge of being fresh or relatively fresh with knowing the culture that was already there. Part of which why I had left there and went to the state of Delaware, which intrinsically had an interesting culture in itself. With the Delaware State Police is where I went for a few years. But being able to identify and giving the staff, I mean, at the time they were spending 8 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week. And part of that culture change was being able to sell, if you will, to the powers that be, movement toward a 12-hour shift and showing the benefit and getting the buy-in. And of course, with buy-in, as you can imagine, it was 12, 15, 16 different individuals. There's differences of opinion and different beliefs. So it was incorporating their opinions. How do you feel? What do you think we should do? Down to how do you think, what color should we paint the walls? How can we reconfigure the room? Going to that part, to being in a culture that was top down, do as I say, have an opinion, to I want to hear your opinion. You have a voice. You're spending more time in there than I am, so tell me within reason. And of course, there was some extravagant ideas, as in anywhere, and you have to draw that line. But I think one of the first steps was giving them a voice, and knowing not only that they had a voice, but that their voice would be acknowledged. They wouldn't always get their way, or it wouldn't always significantly change a policy or a procedure or creature comfort, but they were heard and they were respected. And I think showing that just intrinsically as human beings, that we respect another human being enough to ask them their opinion and actually listen to it. And when there was a great idea, we did whatever we could to institute that. And when there was a half-baked idea, we tried to help cultivate that and didn't want to, chastise it or make fun of it, but make sure that they were heard and say, let's try something else. Go back to the drawing board. And you know, not that it was perfect along the ways, and at the time I'm still younger in my career and I'm still learning, but it was learning from not having a voice and being told to making a culture that they could be heard.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Ken.
well, I have something I want to get to, but I really want to just jump in on the half-baked idea. There is nothing better than half-baked ideas. One of the things that I'm really sensitive to, having spent so many years as a chief officer, and especially as a fire chief, you get so used to, you know, the looking out for the problems, the pitfalls, the things that can go wrong. You scrutinize everything. So the half-baked ideas, the outside the box thinking, almost becomes impossible for leaders, because you're so ingrained in must get this right. Because like you said, the color of the walls, people are going to have an opinion about the color of the walls. So being open to half-baked ideas, or just ideas in general, all the best ideas about the fire departments that I worked for and ran, they came from the line staff. They came from the folks that were actually living the day-to-day job and doing the work. They're the ones that were dealing with the problems. So they were most invested in the solution, and they would come up with these brilliant ideas. And it's like, let's run, let's go, let's chase it. I love it.
Yeah, and a volunteer fire communities, it's the same thing. We did work, but some of the best ideas we ever had were, you know, the black helmets, if you will, the you know, the folks 1 to 5 years in the service that weren't line officers, that'd be standing with the JOs, the lieutenants, the captains after a call or after a training, and say, man, let's try this, or if we could just do this. And it came from a culture in that department that most of the chiefs were like, yeah, let's do a training drill. Let's screw it up. Let's see, you know, safely. Let's mess this up and see what we can do. And you know, I hate to say things that are taken for granted today, but you know, I remember in the mid-late 90s, we got our first pressurized water can. That was a big deal for us. We'd never had that tool, and it was a bunch of us youngins that we wanted to try it. And so then, you know, probably back in the day, and we did burns that we shouldn't have done burns, and you know, had room and contents, but learning how to manipulate that tool, and that used properly, you can effectively put out a large volume of fire, or at least knock it down enough to control it. Yeah. with 2.5 gallons of pressurized water. You know, and that's a lesson today that it's interesting. I still have friends back there and friends here that they're like, man, we put out a lot of fire with this water can. I'm like, oh, we've been saying that for 20 years now. And then I realized, you know, how old we are. But recognizing the ergonomics of mounting ladders on engines at, you know, chest or waist height, instead of having to climb up a piece of apparatus, get a ladder down, or, you know, those sorts of things that are every day now. We learned that around the water cooler, if you will, around the tailboard after a call. And so that's, I agree with you. That's where some of the best ideas in my career at least came from.
Well, and you just hit on it a second ago, you've really batted for the cycle. You're volunteer firefighter. You have had experience in law enforcement, experience in a communication center, experience with EMS, experience with emergency management. I mean, you have had a very well-rounded, experiential learning environment. Your entire career. I'm curious how that shapes the work you do today, because not everybody has that perspective. Many of us just grow up in what everything is. The fire department is everything. That's all I know. It's all I see, or whatever the case may be. That's not your lived experience. I'm curious about that.
Well, and we'll leave the 5 years I spent working in a correction facility for a later discussion too. And I want to emphasize working in a corrections facility, not being in one. But I think that's the key, Ken. And being now 20 years, 2025 will be my 20th anniversary, if you will, in emergency management discipline. And I really think, and I harp on this, and when I teach classes, of the emergency management professional, even though we're from or have ties to a particular discipline, we really have to be that 30 to 50,000 foot view. And our job is to be, 2, 3, 5 steps ahead, especially working an event or an incident. And where I really think that benefits my past, benefits me, and even a couple of years stint in a private sector as well, is that not that I'll ever say or take such the love and respect that I have for law enforcement brothers and sisters. I've never worn the badge. I've never had the responsibility they have, but it was my job to help keep them safe. And I worked in the element of where we had one police officer working midnight shift for a 300 square mile area. And that was one of the things as probably a 21-year-old adult was like, it is my job to make sure he or she goes home to their family. And so, but being able to relate is my point, being able to relate to what they do and what they go through. I didn't know law enforcement when I got into the dispatch world. And so one of the focuses I had was it just made sense to me of, hey, can I go ride along? Can I see what you all experience on a shift? Because I really think it'll help me serve you better, and do things better. And I'll still to this day remember I was just blown away. And even being in the fire service, an EMT and a paramedic didn't even resonate. Blown away by such a difference of being a law enforcement officer on a call during the daytime versus at dark time. Everything changes: perception, vision, element of surprise. And how there was a couple officers that I watched, how they changed, they carried themselves during the nighttime, during the daytime. And I think that's one of the elements. So being able to appreciate the disciplines as a dispatcher, then moving into emergency management. And so when you're in the room, right, and you're trying to do this plan and you're trying to get their function straight, being able to sit and speak the language and relate to them. Not say I've been one, because I could do that with fire chiefs and fire departments and EMTs all day, but law enforcement, today here, I would say that I probably have some better relationships with the sheriff's deputies, some of their middle leadership, and our municipal police chiefs. I don't want to say better than the fire chiefs, but I spend a lot more time with them because they invite me to their events. And I'm not going to take the credit for this, but building the team, everything we do here is unified. We run a unified command for everything, whether it be a 5K through the neighborhood, or whether it be we just finished prior to election year of having 6 Secret Service sponsored VIP visits combined with 2 major events for us for the year, all within a 5-week period. And everything we do has fire, has EMS, has law enforcement, has emergency management, and then of course all those other ancillaries that you need. But that's the culture that we've bred here. And it doesn't mean that the fire chief has to have been a police officer. It has to be that they both can relate to the responsibilities that each has and see that, hey, I need you. Active shooter incidents. Our cops just don't like doing ICS. They realize they have to do it. They realize they're not very good at it. And when we started our rescue task force training implementation, they realized that our fire guys and gals had an advantage of, hey, we're going to put you on the immediate dispatch for if we have a confirmed active assailant incident. And we'd really like it if you come help us with staging and command. That's, I mean, I just think that's how it should be. And it's hard sometimes to break cultures and break down silos. And listen, we still struggle with egos and silos. We're all type A's, right? But when you get to work with one another, and the secret here is we have lots of planned events. Thankfully, it's a blessing. Maybe we don't have a lot of real world serious events, but we work lots of planned events. We have lots of implied threats. We have lots of threats and hazards cases. But we do everything unified, that when that shoe drops, when we have a serious emergency unplanned event, they're automatically going to do the unified approach because that's how we do things.
Yeah.
It is a non-negotiable.
You're literally describing our lives as a phenomenal summary. You had an extremely successful career. you have all this experience from a variety of professions that come into the public safety world. And then recently, if you could explain to us, you started a consulting business. How did that process take place? Not just, in your mind, but in actuality, rolling that out?
Well, um, pretty much how everything else in my career and life has happened by chance. I got dipped into emergency management by chance of volunteering to go hand out water and ice, and got pulled into emergency management. That we can talk about that later. But the business aspect of it, as I've climbed a career, and look, I'm only 51. I say only. Some days working in public safety in the public sector, you feel like you're 70 or 80, but we all can relate to that. Um, 2.5 years ago, unexpectedly, my mom took ill and passed away. She was 68. Being with her as she took her final moments, which I'm very blessed, it made me feel very expendable. It made me realize, geez, she's dying at 68, and I just turned 50, and I only have, in retrospect, and take this hypothetically, but geez, I could only have 18 years left to live.
Yeah.
And do I continue want to be working for a government, which in some aspects of working for a government, and if my bosses hear this, I don't mean this derogatorily, but sometimes it's a definition of insanity. We do the same things over and over again, and we get new elected officials, and then we have to retrain and the same things over and over again. And it's tiring, and it's a lot sometimes. Not that I don't like it, not that I don't appreciate the opportunities that I've had, but I felt very human and very expendable at that point in time, and spent some time driving back and forth to Pennsylvania going, I don't want to work a 40-hour work week on a salary, or a 60-hour week and get paid for 40, if I only have 18 years left to live. And again, hypothetically, it doesn't mean that I'm going to die at 68, but that got me thinking of, and then being an instructor with one of the National Domestic Preparedness Consortium members, I love to travel. I love to go into another community and hear how they do things, and play a role and meet new people and meet new. In this business, it's not necessarily just meeting somebody you won't remember. I think of everybody as a colleague. Everybody I meet from that point on is a colleague, and I always file something away of that. I can reach out to friends in Washington County, Pennsylvania, or Bern, Oregon, and say, hey, remember we were there and you said you had this plan, and that's how I look at things. And so how can I maximize if I can define how I live my life, how it's most fulfilling to my heart and my soul, fills my cup, if you will. But at the same token, seeing and feeling as we came out of COVID, how we either had the institutional mass retirements, or unfortunate, some deaths within all of our disciplines. And so now we have this void of mentorship. The third leg to that was talking to people who I consider my mentors in emergency management from 2005, who I still rely on to give me advice, and having a conversation with one of those, a dear friend, Bob Latham. He was a retired director of state of Mississippi that I served under during Katrina. Said, hey, Greg, we appreciate hearing from you and calling us, but you're the mentor now. It's time for you to carry on the proper way to do this business, and to make sure the masses understand this is our discipline. And so that three-phased approach led me to say, if I want to create the freedom to do the most good, I need to start my own business. Now, full disclosure, I've had Preparedness 360 Solutions, which there's some hidden things in my logo, my business. It's 360 degrees, pretty much. And this is not ego, it's just confidence that whatever you have public safety wise, I can help you with. And if I can't personally help you with, I know someone who I can bring in that can help you with that. Because I'm blessed to have colleagues and know some of the best in all of our industries worldwide, and have relationships with them. So That's how my thought process was on the business, that having a business I could do the most good. We could really help bridge that gap, that institutional gap from the mass retirements and what COVID caused us. But I've had one contract that fell in my lap, believe it or not, that actually helped lead to the creation of that. And I think sometimes there's a higher power that guides that, and it was very successful. So now, I'm working with that of where to do the most good, and that's kind of where we are today.
And they can find you on LinkedIn, I take it, Greg?
Yep, LinkedIn, personally on Facebook, of course, which my kids tell me that's for old people, and I threaten to take their phones away from them, so they can't tic-tac or whatever they do. We tease back and forth. But LinkedIn is where my professional profile is. Preparedness 360. We have a website. We're working with some folks to put some more content on there. Looking at doing little tidbits, here and there for just basic emergency management tidbits and stuff as we go forward. And that's prep360solutions.com is the website. So
okay, good. Thanks for sharing. And I'll let Ken ask the final question before we close up our little interview today.
Well, you actually hit on the one thing that I was most curious about, because Chief Halstead and myself, we're both, post government career, and it was passion in what we were doing, and the thing, whatever the thing was that pulled Chief Halstead into this. I have my thing, the mission that I was like, you know what, this is what I'm going to continue to do post retirement. And I think you did a really nice job of kind of giving us the big picture on 360. But I'm going to ask you to focus a little bit more narrow on your personal mission and the thing that you want to take from all of your education experience. What is the thing that you really want to accomplish with your professional position and the voice and the pulpit that you have now to speak from with 360? What is the thing that gets you up in the morning that you're like, that's the win for me that I want to get done? What is that?
That's easy. Coffee is what okay, that's a different topic.
I'm with you.
As strong and dark as possible. But no, I think as a whole, just that I've seen in the 20 years that I've been in this industry, whether it's organic, whether it's people driven, I'm not going to assign blame, but I've seen an overcomplication of our discipline. But at the same token, I've continued to see that the public, the elected officials, the appointed officials, they don't know what we do. And they don't understand the criticality and how important we are to either the success or the horrible, catastrophic failures that can happen without competent, professional, passionate emergency management professionals. And it's a team approach. It's not one person. It takes one person to be the conductor, but it takes that team. And so I think what keeps me going is that I have been accused and known to oversimplify things, or maybe to take an overarching, very critical issue and dumb it down, if you will. I'm not trying to be insulting, but just I'll use the example. We had a very catastrophic, paralyzing ransomware attack that affected our entire county government in June. But we had just went through the tedious process of doing a continuity of operations, continuity of government plan the year before. And so as we're sitting and finding out how serious, and we can't even do 911 is how serious this was at first. And my bosses go, man, where do we start? And I said, that's easy. We went through a year process of determining every county essential function that we have. Here, let's just throw them up on the board and let's start with life safety, then protecting the environment, then critical infrastructure, and then everything else. It's that easy. And they're like, it's not that easy. And then they're like, I guess it is that easy. And we knew where to start because we had spent the time preparing or planning. And so what gets me up is that we don't need to overcomplicate. Do we face complicated scenarios and incidents? And yes, absolutely we do. But when you have a great team and you've spent the time prior to the event building a relationship so that you're not exchanging business cards during a crisis, you can overcome anything. Even if you have to draw a plan in the dirt in the middle of a parking lot, buy a Suburban, buy a fire truck, buy a police car. If you have the team that, and we know each other, and we know our strengths and weaknesses, we can overcome anything. And I think that's my mission. My mission is, as we take these folks that are coming out of college or they're coming out of the police force or the fire force, and they don't know what emergency management is, but it's a discipline that we have to fund, we have to function, it has to be there. They know there's an important, that's the picture I want to draw to them, is give them that bridge of saying it's hard, but it doesn't have to be.
Well, I wish you all the best, and I wish you good luck in your personal mission, because as Chief Halstead would probably agree with me, it feels good to be able to chase that thing that matters so much to us, because we put a lot of time and energy into a career, and to be able to carry it forward into the later years of our life is quite an honor. So good luck.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very impressive. We definitely wish you the best of luck. But what you're going to pass on for the next generation and or a few generations of leadership does instill a legacy. So kudos to you. More people need to follow that track. So you gave us the website, and then people can reach out to you on LinkedIn. We always end these with a easy personal question, and this one's going to be a fun one. So there's two parts. So the first one is, what is your favorite meal ever? Like if someone said, hey, there's no limits whatsoever, we're going to make this meal for you, what would that meal be?
Oh, well, since I am a passionate part-time recreator of authentic Texas smoked barbecue and meats, I'm going to have to say brisket and the trimmings with a good cigar and a nice glass of bourbon for dessert.
All right. So now this follow-up is, why is that meal your favorite? Is it a feeling? Is it a memory? Is it a relationship that was built around it?
I think because for whatever the barbecue is, there's an effort that goes into it. And there's an effort, and most folks that prepare barbecue prepare it with love and thought. And then the memory of when we used to do whatever it was in Maryland, whether we went out and caught crabs and steamed crabs, or whether we had a picnic, it was, quote, our family. It was our fire guys. It was our, and there was, whether we were mourning or whether we were celebrating, we were better together. So I think that's, the process of doing it and sitting down and breaking bread and being together and working through our struggles or celebrating success, we're better together.
Awesome. Well, now you got me hungry for lunch, so I got to figure out what I'm going to do for lunch. But Gregg, we appreciate your time, especially, on today's a Friday, so I know it's been a busy week for everybody that's in our professions. Thank you. We enjoyed getting to know you. I'll send you a follow-up email, and then when this gets ready, edited, and gets pushed, we'll also send a link your way that you can share on all your social platforms. But what an impressive background. And now this next step, I think you have just gave yourself the ability to platform all of that knowledge and experience so the next generation is even better than what we were. So thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you, fellas. And I did some background on you and was impressed with your pedigree and your careers. And it's an honor to share even a short amount of time. And maybe in the future we can get together again, or we'll run into you in my travels. But it's an honor for you guys to invite me. I appreciate you spending the time and taking the time for little old me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Gregg. Happy holidays to you.
Same to you.